Hello, ladies and gentlemen, it's me, your guide from the dark side, Dawson Richard. I hope everybody's well and enjoying their day thus far, and I'd like to start this episode off with a quick apology. Episode 8, The Point Pleasant Pest, had some serious technical problems. You probably noticed if you listened that there were some, volume issues. The volume would spike at certain points, and it was just really discomforting to listen to. So I went back and tried to pull up my save file in Audacity so that I could just edit the louder sound clips down a bit. But wouldn't you know, my dumbass didn't save. So in order to fix that episode, I would have had to have re-recorded literally all of it. So I just cut my losses and uploaded the episode with a disclaimer about the volume in the comments. I just want to apologize to you all for that one. I got kind of lazy in the editing process and didn't really take my time to check on it, and I don't want to give you all half-assed products. So I promise that in the future I will strive to make each episode a fucking masterpiece. So apology out of the way. Remember, if you're squeamish around gore, murder, and other heinous acts of violence, please back out now.
Uncommon amount of disappearances of ships and planes. No warning, no distress calls, no wreckage.
There's clearly something out there that poses a deadly threat to shipping. The Bermuda Triangle.
Today's episode is about the infamous Bermuda Triangle, a really interesting anomaly yet to be explained. So I can remember when I was a kid specifically checking out books about the Bermuda Triangle alongside the Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot and other things. I just had a shit ton of books on this one topic. So for a solid 3 weeks, I was just obsessed with the Bermuda Triangle. But anyway, ranting aside, let's get right into today's story. October 11th, 1492. The night air is quiet as the crewmen of the Santa Maria go about their duties. The mighty vessel is bound for the island of Guanahani. All is calm when suddenly one of the men spots something off in the distance. A single candle-like flame illuminates out of the dark. The men rush to see it, and Christopher Columbus himself comes starboard to see this mysterious light. Later, he and his son both recorded the phenomenon, calling it a small wax candle that rose and lifted up. Just a week before this incident, Christopher reported a great flame that plummeted into the ocean. Now, weeks later, lights were appearing on the sea, and compasses were giving erratic readings. What Christopher Columbus hadn't realized was that he would be one of the first recorded experiences within the Bermuda Triangle. So the Bermuda Triangle, or as it's sometimes called the Devil's Triangle, is a loosely defined 500,000 square miles in the North Atlantic Ocean. The corners of this triangle are located in Miami, Florida, San Juan, Puerto Rico, and Bermuda. But what is it that makes this mysterious region so infamous? Well, throughout history, ships and aircraft that pass through the Bermuda Triangle end up vanishing, without a trace. Those vessels that are found intact are usually found with their crew missing. So the way I'm going to set this episode up, I'm going to give you all some of the most infamous stories that came out of the Bermuda Triangle, and then I'll go over some of the popular and then also the fucking wild theories that come out of this. So we're going to start with the first major and what I think is the creepiest account from the Bermuda Triangle, which is the encounter of the Ellen Austin, a 19th century ship that was mainly used to bring immigrants to the New World. In December of 1881, the Ellen Austin carried a group of immigrants and made sail to New York from Liverpool. So on this voyage, the ship was going to make its way through the Sargasso Sea. But ill luck can sometimes befall any crew, and several weeks in, the ship found itself stalled. No wind to drive it, so they're basically just sitting in the water. They can't really move. Suddenly, one of the men spotted something floating close to their ship. A schooner, which is like a smaller boat, drifted through the waves. The captain, A.J. Griffin, grabbed a spyglass and tried to identify the ship, but no colors flew from the mast. Griffin was cautious and ignored it for the time being. So days passed, and finally Captain Griffin saw fit to investigate the ship. So he grabbed a few good men and he boards the ship. What he found was a ship completely abandoned. The logbook was missing, but its cargo, an expensive shipment of mahogany wood, was still there. This would rule out an attack by pirates, which was Captain Griffin's first theory. Why would they take the crew but leave the goods? Griffin saw this as an opportunity and decided to claim the vessel for his own. He left his men, or a crew of his men, to take control of the schooner. Both ships are now under the possession of Captain Griffin, and he sets a course for New York. But that night, a storm whipped up and separated both ships, to the point where Captain Griffin could no longer see the schooner. When the storm cleared, he caught up to the vessel and peered once more through his spyglass, but to his horror, the crew was nowhere to be seen. Despite the urging of his fellow crew members, Griffin once again caught up to the vessel and left some members of his crew to sail her. So this guy's he's gonna get this boat. He's like determined, because at this point I would have already fucking turned around. Like, that's a no-go for me. But this guy like wants this fucking boat. So this time both ships, he decides, would toll their bells to let each other know that the crew was alive. So they continue their course to New York. That night, a dense fog fell over the sea, shrouding the sight of both crews. The fog was so thick that the lantern that illuminated the mystery ship could no longer be seen. But Griffin didn't sweat it. He wasn't worried. The bells would keep them close together. So Griffin starts ringing his bell, and the other ship rings theirs. So they keep going, back and forth they went, keeping close to each other. Griffin rang his bell once more, waiting for the other crew to reciprocate. But they didn't. So he rings his bell again, but the mystery ship had fallen silent. Deathly silent. When morning came, the fog had vanished, and with it, the mystery schooner. Griffin, disheartened and bewildered, caught the wind and sailed to New York. So there are some people who have tried explaining and debunking this one. Some people say that the second crew just took the ship and dipped out to reap like the mahogany wood for themselves, but I don't buy that shit. Others have pointed out that when they made port in New York, they reported 0 casualties in their log. But I don't know, like, would they count missing people as casualties? Who knows? I just think it's super cool and creepy. So whatever the explanation is, I'm going to go with the creepy one. It's a fucking ghost ship. Our second tale is of Joshua Slocum, a legendary sailor and the first man to sail alone around the world in 1895. From a young age, Joshua was a sailor, and this Nova Scotian-born man loved the sea. He also loved to write, as he wrote a book about his solo trip around the world. He first shipped off in Boston, and after an extended visit to his boyhood home at Breer Island and visiting some old haunts on the coast of Nova Scotia, Slocum departed North America at Sambro Island Lighthouse near Halifax, Nova Scotia on July 3rd. He was intending to sail eastward around the world using the Suez Canal, but when he got near Gibraltar, he realized that sailing through the southern Mediterranean would be too dangerous for a lone sailor because of the piracy that still went on there at the time. So he headed to Brazil and then the Straits of Magellan. At that point, he was unable to start across the Pacific for 40 days because of a storm. Eventually, he made his way to Australia, sailed north along the east coast, crossed the Indian Ocean, rounded the Cape of Good Hope, and then headed straight back to North America. More than 3 years later, on June 27, 1898, he returned to Newport, Rhode Island, having circumnavigated the world a distance of more than 46,000 miles. The saddest thing about this, though, is that at the time, the Spanish-American War was going on, so he didn't get, any recognition for this huge accomplishment until after the whole war was over, and that's just really shitty. So for somebody to accomplish something like that, they'd have to be a damn fine sailor, right? Well, on November 14th, 1909, Slocum set sail for the West Indies on one of his usual winter voyages. He had also expressed interest in starting his next adventure, exploring the Orinoco, Rio Negro, and Amazon rivers. Slocum was never heard from again. This may seem like just a normal lost at sea type deal, but the important factor in this tale is that some reports claim that he stopped for a resupply in Miami. And this means that his disappearance would have happened somewhere near the Bermuda Triangle. So in July 1910, his wife informed the newspapers that she believed he was lost at sea. At the time, most who knew Slocum believed that the Spray, his ship, had been run down by a steamer or struck by a whale. The Spray being too sound of a craft and Slocum was too experienced of a mariner for any other cause to be considered likely. But despite being an experienced sailor, Slocum never learned to swim and considered it to be useless. In 1924, Joshua Slocum was declared legally dead, and all kinds of theories have been made out about how it happened. Some people believe that a whale capsized his boat or that a steamer boat ran him down in the night without even knowing. Some believe that bad weather had something to do with it, or that he passed away of natural causes due to being 65 when he made the trip. One of the weirder theories is that he was unhappy with his wife and thus set out to sea and started a new life somewhere else. Whatever the case though, Bermuda Triangle or not, I think that it's messed up that Joshua didn't get the fame that he deserved upon his return. So before we move on, here's to you, Joshua Slocum. I raise this glass of Jones soda in your name. You were a damn fine sailor, and I respect and admire you and your great accomplishment. So the next major account occurs in the heat and tension of the First World War, and amidst it all, there was the USS Cyclops, which is a badass fucking name. Let me just fucking go off real quick. It's named after the menacing creature from Greek mythology, and it's probably the coolest fucking name for a ship that you can come up with other than the USS fucking Kick-Ass. I don't know. But the USS Cyclops was a collier, a large cargo ship designed to carry coal and other ores, mainly to provide to the war front. The Cyclops had already had 2 successful missions, one in the Baltic, where she supplied 2nd Division ships. And another in Veracruz, where she supplied coal to the ships and successfully evacuated refugees. It's not fucking easy talking all the way through a podcast for anybody that wants to point out all my fucking stutters and shit. I'm adding you, whoever you are. Fucking asshole. So anyway, it was only natural that when American forces joined the fight, that the USS Cyclops would also join them into the fray. So near the final year of the war in 1918, the USS Cyclops was commissioned to deliver a shipment of manganese ore, a metal that was commonly used to manufacture munitions. The ship set off on the 16th of February and stopped in Salvador on the 20th. Before it left port, Commander Worley, who was the captain of the ship at the time, submitted a report that the starboard engine had a cracked cylinder and was not operative. This report was confirmed by a survey board which recommended, however, that the ship be returned to the United States. The report also mentioned that the vessel was carrying well over the recommended weight and was overbeared, but investigations in Rio proved the ship had been loaded and secured properly. The USS Cyclops then set out for Baltimore on the 4th of March. She was never seen again. Many reports show that at their estimated location, a large storm had swept through the area, so some think that the combination of overloading and the vicious storm could have caused the boat to sink below the waves. Others think that the Germans intercepted them and stole the precious manganese ore for their own munitions. But could the Bermuda Triangle have had something to do with it? For those who are skeptical, I would like to point out that after the USS Cyclops went missing, its 2 sister ships, the USS Proteus and the USS Nereus, set sail on the same course, only to meet the same mysterious fate. One of the most infamous and popular tales from the Bermuda Triangle occurred shortly after the Allied victory in World War II. On December 5, 1945, the group of TBM Avenger torpedo bombers known as Flight 19 were making preparations to run a routine exercise. This group was made up of almost entirely students, except for the commander, Lieutenant Charles Taylor, a veteran of different conflicts in the Pacific during World War II. Their course would take them east, away from the Florida coast, and have the bombers conduct bombing runs at a place called Hens and Chickens Shoals. They would then fly over Grand Bahama Island before changing course a 3rd time and flying southwest back to base. The course was a fairly simple, triangular path that should have had no foreseeable issues, so the bombers loaded up and took to the skies. About an hour passed, and at 2:30 p.m. the men had successfully completed their bombing run with no trouble, so they set their course to return to base. But something was wrong. Lieutenant Taylor came across the radio and claimed that his navigations were malfunctioning and that the planes were on the wrong course.
Air Station, this is Lieutenant Charles Taylor. My compasses are out and I'm trying to find Fort Lauderdale.
Taylor said over the net.
I'm over land, but it's broken. I think I'm in the Florida Keys, but I don't know how far down.
It was at this time that Lieutenant Robert F. Cox, another Navy flight instructor who was flying near the Florida coast, overheard Flight 19's radio communications. He immediately informed the air station of the situation and then contacted the Avengers to ask if they needed assistance. Cox advised that Taylor fly north, for if he was truly in the Florida Keys, that would put him close to Miami. This claim made no sense though, because Taylor had completed his bombing run an hour earlier, so to say that he was hundreds of miles at a completely different location wouldn't have made any sense. Taylor made the decision to turn his men north to find Florida. But what he didn't know was that he was leading them further out to sea, closer and closer to the Bermuda Triangle.
Damn it!
One of the pilots said over the radio.
If we just turn west, we'll go home.
So finally, the men convinced Taylor to head west, but at 6 p.m. he once again redirects his men to change direction, and amidst the confusion, a storm began to whip up, pelting the men's aircraft with heavy rain and blinding them with thick, dark clouds.
We didn't go far enough east,
Taylor said to his men.
We need to just turn around and go east again.
But the further the men go, the more faded their communications become, as if something is blocking their transmissions. The air station attempts to keep contact, but it's fading fast. The men begin to make eerie comments when asked their location.
Everything looks strange, even the ocean,
said one man.
It looks like we're headed into white water. We're completely lost.
As their fuel ran low, Taylor did the only thing he could. He prepared his men for a crash landing. He was heard saying,
All planes, close up tight.
Suddenly, the worried voices of the men were replaced with deafening static. All communication went dark. In a desperate attempt to save the men, the Navy immediately dispatched a group of PBM Mariner flying boats around 7:30 p.m. A pair of these flying boats took off from an air station north of Fort Lauderdale just 20 minutes later. However, one of them seemed to follow Flight 19's lead by suddenly vanishing off radar and going missing as well. The Navy was aware that Taylor's piloting style was unorthodox and that he often flew by the seat of his pants. To rule the accident as his fault deeply upset his mother, and so, to spare her, the Navy labeled the incident as occurring for reasons unknown. A pair of ships were found in 1991 submerged below 750 feet of water just off the coast of Florida. A salvage ship found them and examined the plane's ID numbers. However, their IDs showed that they were not from Flight 19. But what if it was Flight 19, but from an alternate universe? Solid evidence shows that what most likely transpired that day is more horrible than anyone could imagine. While navigating the storm, a wormhole was torn in space and time inside the Bermuda Triangle. The tear was a link to another dimension, an alternate reality where Flight 19 took the same route, but the plane ID numbers were different, and so our Flight 19 was whisked into the alternate dimension where they crash landed, hence why they've never been found, and the planes that were found in 1991 were indeed Flight 19, just not our dimension's Flight 19. I did it! I solved it! Take that, Illuminati! Nah, I'm just messing around. But in all honesty, Flight 19 was never found and remains one of the largest mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle, but it is a perfect segue into the different theories that come out of the Bermuda Triangle. So first, the scientific theories, then the unique ones. So one theory that researchers have put out there is that methane gas has something to do with the missing ships and aircraft. In 2016, scientists found many large craters on the ocean floor just off the coast of Norway. These 150-foot deep craters were being created by large bubbles of methane gas that were being formed due to the oil and gas in the seafloor. When these methane gas bubbles reach their limit, however, they explode, causing these large eruptions and forming these craters. So it wouldn't be super unlikely for these bubbles to rise to the surface of the water and erupt near or right under a ship. And if these bubbles are capable of creating half-a-mile wide craters, what could they do to a ship unfortunate enough to be sailing the waters around Bermuda? But Dawson, what about the planes? Supposedly, these bubbles can rise high into the air before erupting, causing them to blow up in the sky. So any low-flying planes would most likely be plummeted into the sea below. Another scientific theory is that rogue waves are the culprit in these mysterious disappearances. Within the Bermuda Triangle, there is a point where northern storms and southern storms collide. This is including a lot of the tropical storms that would no doubt move in from Florida. You have this perfect recipe for rogue waves. And these waves caused by these tropical storms can reach 30 feet tall. So when you have 3 of these storms, these rogue waves can form, reaching up to 100 feet tall. So it doesn't matter how good of a sailor you are, you can't outwit a violent sea and a 100-foot wave. So these waves would no doubt drag the ships and all the poor souls aboard to a watery death. But that only covers ships. What about aircraft? What about Christopher Columbus's writings about malfunctioning navigations? Well, within the Bermuda Triangle, there is a large stretch of area that many theorists suggest the agonic line passes through. The agonic line is that point where the magnetic and true north are perfectly aligned, and thus navigation is fooled and acts erratically, resulting in a magnetic phenomenon. But what about the more bizarre theories? What about the evidence that is laughed off by scientists and skeptics? Let's go over them, shall we? Alright, the first of our more strange theories is that UFOs and aliens have something to do with the mysterious disappearances. Why aliens? And what does the Bermuda Triangle have to do with them? Well, some theorists suggest that because of its isolation, or even because of our fear and aversion of it, that many aliens see it as the perfect remote location to abduct people, boats, and aircraft in order to do research on them. So the ships and people go missing because they are plucked right out of the triangle. So to support this claim, there have been a plethora of UFO sightings, not only at sea, but more specifically around the Bermuda Triangle. Here recently, the Navy even released actual, footage that they took of UFOs out on the ocean spotted by fighter pilots, which, by the way, this fucking whole government releasing UFO footage, it's not a big deal. Those fucking videos have been floating around the internet for so long, so now they're revealing it as this big thing, as what I believe is some sort of cover-up. They've got something else, so they're trying to feed us a little bit of knowledge to see how we react. Or it's just to cover up this whole coronavirus shit and to give us something else to think about, but I don't buy it. But how many of these sightings are true, and how many of them are hoaxed? It's still unknown. Another theory is that the ancient city of Atlantis lies below the waves, its location right underneath the Bermuda Triangle. Some have theorized that the loss of navigation and odd occurrences that pop up inside of the triangle are due to Atlantis. Some have even said that the Atlanteans used some ancient form of technology, sometimes it's said to be crystal-based, or other times said to be more magnetic in origin, and that this technology is interfering with navigation systems and leading sailors and pilots to their doom. This theory, though outrageous, would lend some merit to the magnetic theory that disrupts compasses and navigational tools. And even odder than that, there are some that even believe that tears in the fabric of space and time are to blame. One survivor, pilot Bruce Gernon, came up with a theory of his own. On his trip, he was flying with 2 passengers when his aircraft was swallowed up by 2 massive, ominous clouds that formed a vortex and spiraled. Gernon found that his navigational devices were malfunctioning and that they were not perceivable on radar. When they emerged, they found their trip had only taken them 35 minutes, rather than the 75 minutes it should have. His analysis? That his aircraft had somehow been pushed forward in time. Now, I've heard a lot of people talk and seen a lot of articles that talk about this weird, involving string theory and quantum physics and stuff like that, into these tears in space and time and the Bermuda Triangle. Do with that with what you will. I mean, I'm not a fucking scientist. I don't know. It sounds reasonable. But strangest of all was something discovered on the seafloor by an oceanographer named Dr. Meyer Verlag. Something that scientists have yet to explain, despite its very real existence. Dr. Verlag used sonar to peer deep beneath the waves, where he found not one, but 2 pyramids nestled at the bottom of the seafloor, 2,000 meters down. What is it that is so special about this? Well, not only are the pyramids made entirely out of a crystal-like substance, but they are 3 times larger than the pyramids of Cheops in Egypt. But where was Dr. Verlag using his sonar? In what location are these pyramids located? That's right, ladies and gentlemen, right underneath the Bermuda Triangle. Are these pyramids the remnants of Atlantis? The real Atlantis that Socrates claimed to have disappeared in the depths of the sea? Or are these disappearances just human error, the result of poor luck and bad weather? You decide for yourself, for I believe that the world will never truly know the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. All right, everybody, that is about it for our episode. Don't click out just yet, though. I do have some news. But I hope you guys enjoyed it, because I know I really loved covering this topic and doing a deep dive on all the interesting stories and theories. Tell me what you guys think about it in the comments below, or if you have any suggestions, feel free to message me at thevoidfrequency@gmail.com. I read all of your stuff. But before I close this out, I do have some news. Firstly, I will be appearing on another podcast called Those People Here Tomorrow. I'll keep you all informed on how it goes, and when he gets his podcast up and running, for those of you who avidly listen to podcasts, you can tune into his stuff too if you like. And secondly, if you are an avid reader, especially a fan of dystopian YA novels, be sure to check out Let's Talk About Lit, free to listen to on CastBox and YouTube. My wife has just made it and is looking for listeners. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Thanks again for all the support you guys give me and this podcast. It motivates me to make more content and keep pumping out episodes for you all. Keep it real, stay safe, social distance, wear a mask, please. I can't tell you how many people I've seen just fucking strutting around without masks and just breathing and like coughing on people like point blank. It's fucking stressful and irritating. But yeah, stay safe. What am I forgetting? Oh yeah, stay weird, everybody.